So thank you for choosing to be with us today. We know you have lots of choices, and we're delighted you chose to spend time with us. Today, we continue with Edwene Gaines' book, The Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, looking at the third section on forgiveness. At first, I couldn't figure out what forgiveness had to do with prosperity. So if that's a puzzle to you too, perhaps this morning's reminder will shed some light on that question. But first, I want to remind you about a big idea, and that's the idea of the four kingdoms of consciousness, or the four stages of spiritual maturity. This idea, I think, was first proposed by Dr. Lloyd Strom and Dr. Marcia Sutton, and then was popularized by Dr. Michael Beckwith. It often shows up as part of the Foundation's curriculum, and I usually talk about it on a Sunday, at least once a year, and sometimes more often than that. It depends on when it fits. And then practitioner Sharon, talked about it in our Revealing Wholeness class earlier this month. So you can think about these four kingdoms or four stages as alternative ways of seeing our individual place in the world. And we all occupy, most of us anyway, occupy different places along this matrix at any given point in time. So nobody that I know of is particularly stuck in one spot only. But the four stages, the first stage, which is how most of the world lives most of the time, the language is blame and shame and guilt and judgment, and it's somebody else's fault and it's not my fault. And bad stuff happens, hard stuff happens, and it's wrong and it's bad and it's ugly and it's mean. The feeling associated with this stage is the feeling of being a victim. Stuff happens to us, and there's nothing we can do about it when we operate from this mindset. We don't know why stuff happens. We just think we're Eeyore or something, and we've got a target painted on our back or on our torso. Bad stuff happens, and it's not our fault. In the Four Kingdom model, this is called the to me stage. Stuff happens to me, or victim consciousness. This is the stage of consciousness where we feel hopeless and helpless, and frankly, screwed. And everybody visits this stage sometimes. Some people even kind of like hanging out here because they don't have the responsibility of being responsible for what happens in their lives. It's somebody else's fault, right? And sometimes they even feel a little bit self-righteous and somehow special because they've been victimized. Truthfully, this is not a comfortable and happy place to live, and some people spend their whole lives here. The second stage, which I consider progress, according to this model, is the stage of the empowered human. Stuff happens by me, or by my actions, or by my thoughts or decisions. This is the stage we visit when we recognize that affirmations work, or that spiritual mind treatment works. We recognize we can have an impact on our life, an effect. We can change the way things happen or the way we see them. Lots of people who arrive at this level are ecstatically happy because they no longer feel like victims. And they aren't. They're victorious. They have realized and have evidence, proof to themselves that shows that they can make choices and they can make decisions and they can have some control over what happens in their lives. We all visit here too. And some people spend the majority of their lives in this space. And sometimes this is a really fabulous place to live. The third kingdom of consciousness or spiritual maturity is when we realize that stuff happens through us. At this level, we recognize that we are a conduit of the goodness of the divine, and it works through us and has an impact on our world. And we have to have had the experience of deciding and controlling and getting what we want in Kingdom 2 to actually really be able to experience this releasing, this letting go that David sang about a minute ago, and being willing to allow that the divine might have a better idea than we do. We have to be willing to let it happen without grasping or trying to manage our experience. One potential downside of this stage is we can perceive our own needs as less important than the needs of the whole, and we can slip into an idea of sacrificing ourselves or being a martyr. That's not useful, and most everybody does it sometimes. We visit this space too. The fourth stage of spiritual maturity is when we realize that the divine works as us. We remember that we are immortal, eternal human beings, one in God and of God, and we choose to live from that place. We see little or no separation between our individual selves, other people, other beings, and the world as a whole. We understand that we are all part of the same fabric of universal consciousness. And we start actually feeling connected to everyone and everything around us. We visit here too, and I don't know anybody that actually lives at this level all the time. Maybe some of the bodhisattvas in our world, but I don't know anybody who manages to pull off living at this high elevation. So anyway, those are the kingdoms. We all live in each one of the quadrants. And depending on what our mental state is, we can visit any of them at any time. So now, getting to today's topic, why does Edwene, as well as other prosperity writers and teachers, consider forgiveness a spiritual practice on the pathway of abundant living? And how does unforgiveness get in our way? We all know what unforgiveness feels like, right? What benefit do we get by holding on to unforgiveness if we're the offended party? We get to feel like we're right and they're wrong. It's plain and simple, right? We get to feel self-righteous, and we judge other people for their bad behavior. But who's actually hurt by our unforgiveness? Not the other person, we are. We're the ones that hurt ourselves when we have an unforgiving mindset. And this is true, period, unless you happen to have a very unhealthy codependent relationship with the person you have a judgment about or unforgiveness about. And that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? We are the ones who get hurt by our own unforgiveness. That's just how it works. A friend of mine used to say, and probably still does say, I just haven't seen him for a decade or so, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Edwene wrote, an unwillingness to forgive is like stabbing ourselves with a knife and expecting the person who did us wrong to feel the pain. When we hold ourselves hostage, feeling bad about something we've done or said, and we don't feel like we can be forgiven for it, who are we hurting? Ourselves. Why? Because we think we should be punished. Who says? What sort of insanity is that? And why do we do that to ourselves? In psychologist Rick Hanson's book, Resilient, we did the book as a book study not that long ago. He offers steps we can take to forgive ourselves and a couple different methods or techniques that we can use to forgive others who we have perceived have harmed us. I won't take the time now to go through the steps, but you probably still have the book because it hasn't been that long. It's in chapter 12, the chapter on generosity. And you all remember the story of the prodigal son from the Christian New Testament. Dr. Holmes loved to tell this story and to write about it. You know the story. The younger son wanted his inheritance so he could go blow it, so he could spend it in riotous living. He did, and ended up far away from home, hungry and broke, doing the worst possible job a Jewish kid could do, feeding the pigs. He decided that even going home to his dad and being a servant was better than this. So he decided he'd go home and beg forgiveness from his dad. And his father wouldn't even let him apologize and welcomed him home and threw a big party. In the father's mind and the dad's mind, there was nothing to forgive. The kid did what he did and got the experience, got the lesson. And the father was not harmed by the kid doing that. So that no forgiveness was necessary on the father's part. I'm sorry, I'm not that good. We're not usually that good. But I am smart enough, and most of us really are smart enough, to recognize that unforgiveness keeps us stuck in victim consciousness. And the only one who can let us out of that victim consciousness jail is us. When I'm stuck in victim consciousness, I can't experience prosperity or abundance in any form. I won't let myself do it. Dr. Holmes wrote in The Science of Mind on page 457 and 458, "The mind which condemns understands not the truth of being, and the heart which would shut the door to the one that is mistaken strangles its own life, closing its eye to a greater vision. The biggest life is the one that includes the most. Not that we foster vice or place a premium on wrongdoing, but that we understand the frailties of human nature." So back to Edwene. Think of forgiveness as emotional house cleaning. It lets us make room for the good that we desire. It also lets us go as far as we can on our spiritual journey and receive all the universe has to offer. If we refuse to forgive, we cling to self-defeating feelings such as guilt, shame, blame, hurt, resentment, and I would add judgment. When we do this, we can't feel worthy of having the best God can give us. We can't and won't accept God's gifts. To quote a snippet of the video that we watched in class on Wednesday night, Oprah was talking about her experience of being unwanted and unloved by her underage, unwed mother, which started out as unforgiveness, but then turned to forgiveness when she understood the story, the picture. And Oprah said, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. You think forgiveness means accepting what has happened to you. It doesn't. It's accepting that it has happened. And it's not accepting that it was okay." She continues, "It's letting go of the past, so the past does not hold you prisoner." In the same video segment, she shared the stage with a powerful fundamentalist Christian minister, a fellow by the name of T.D. Jakes. He said, "Forgiveness does not exonerate the perpetrator. It does not justify their behavior. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves." And a minister friend of mine, Reverend Carol Huntley, who came to speak with us probably a decade ago, is known for saying, you've been forgiven. You've forgiven someone when they can walk through your mind without creating a feeling of upset in you. May we all get to that mental space where we can let ourselves forgive transgressions of ourselves and others, so that, paraphrasing Gandhi, We don't have anybody walking through our minds with dirty feet. So some lyrics from Daniel Nahmod. I kind of half expected David to sing this song today, but it's quite all right that he didn't. You know this one too. Love is my decision. It's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision. No one else can make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. And then the third verse, love is my decision, it's up to me to dance down the road. Love is my decision, no one else can lighten my load. Once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. So I want to close with some forgiveness affirmations that Edwene put in her book. To me, they read almost like a prayer, and they're certainly worth remembering and repeating when we get stuck in that trap of unforgiveness. Her list goes like this. I forgive myself completely for every mistake I have ever made. I forgive others, knowing that we all did the best we could at the time. Let me say that one again. I forgive others, knowing that we all did the best we could at the time. I let go of guilt, blame, shame, judgment, and hurt. I am free from condemnation. I forgive my parents completely. I forgive everyone who did not give me the love and attention I desired. I forgive myself for my unconscious behaviors of the past, and I forgive others theirs as well. I allow myself to feel forgiven and to move forward in my life. I'll repeat that last one again. I allow myself to feel forgiven and move forward in my life. When we can do this, when we can forgive and feel forgiven, we have the option of living in abundance, of living a prosperous life in all meanings of the word. And the only one that can get in our way is us. We have to do the work because it's only what happens in us that matters. So do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to roll into the prayer. And if I've said anything that's been useful for you to consider, hold that in your mind while I speak the words. I breathe into this space, remembering that divine love blesses all, that no judgment exists in the mind of God, in this whole and holy presence. There's only goodness, there's only peace, there's only joy, there's only harmony. And even when I forget and I think I have been transgressed against, or I have done something to harm someone else, I remember in the mind of God there is no judgment. All is already forgiven. It's all love, it's all peace, it's all joy, it's all goodness. And so I turn my mind and I refocus my attention to this great big truth of God as love as me. And I know that same truth for and about each and every individual. Every single one of us lives as God, as that being of light and wholeness and order. And what could be more beautiful than that? So I celebrate this opportunity to remember for myself and for all that each lives in this space of abundant good. And so I claim it, and I allow it to show up in me, as me, through me, and for me. And I bless each one of us as we walk down this road, seeing the goodness of our days. Knowing the truth of these words, I let them be, and so it is.